Please talk about your career. Where did you start and where are you now? And who were your mentors?
I appreciate that question. It's a good one. I got my master's and my doctorate at Syracuse University. And one of the really nice things about that program is that it focused on social justice, it focused on dynamics of culture and diversity. And so I was really grounded in doing that work through that process. And so as I graduated and worked clinically and then received my full-time job at Adler University, it really allowed me to come into this couple and family therapy program, bringing with me all the experiences that I received and all the learning that I received at Syracuse. And so my mentor was Ken Hardy, and I continue to be mentored by him, and I very much appreciate that. It Again, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. One of the wonderful things about that program, in addition to the social justice focus, was the self of the therapist work. And so I feel like every single faculty person that I had the pleasure to work with really helped me to not only develop my therapeutic skills, but really understand myself and understand, well, what did I bring into the room when I was doing therapy? And how did that impact my work with clients? How was I positioning, power and privilege and marginalization as central to the work? And so, in my career now, where I'm teaching full time at Adler, I've been there about 10 years. We revamped our master's program. We created a doctoral program in couple and family therapy that I'm really proud of. And it's really centered around experiential learning, self of the therapist work, and social justice. So I have the pleasure of working with really wonderful students and really, again, helping them recognize how power, privilege, and marginalization impact us globally, not just in the United States, and really challenge the idea that that we don't have the ability to access personal and collective power to push back and to make change happen. And so I feel really grateful that I learned that as a student and that I can pass that on to my students. I hope that answered the question.
You bring a very interesting topic to the conference. Uh, Please explain it.
Sure. I'm blessed to be able to share the panel with so many wonderful colleagues. And the topic I'm talking about is, looking at contextual and social justice and applying that in supervision. And so one of the things that I really appreciate about contextual is that I think it gives us an opportunity to do that blending, right? Of thinking about social justice, thinking about the ways in which power, privilege, and marginalization are socially constructed, but real and impact our lives on a daily basis. And then looking at the theory and going, okay, from a theoretical perspective, where does this fit in? And I think some theories are harder than others to make it fit in, but I feel like contextual really creates room and space. And I think Naj was really thinking in such a forward and advanced way to really say, if we look at this ledger, if we look at things transgenerationally, if we're really thinking about a revolving slate, actually, if we're thinking about entitlement, if we're thinking about the impact of destructive entitlement, it gives us room to then think about power and privilege. It gives us room to say, hey, wait a minute, how is this part of not just an individual experience, but part of a national and global experience, right? And so I feel like we can look at it in a really huge way and we can kind of narrow it down. And so when I'm doing supervision with students, when I'm doing, peer consultation with colleagues, looking at it through this lens gives me an opportunity to ask questions that guide people in their thinking around social justice. And so I'm really trying to again, think about the concepts, even if I just think about trustworthiness and, reliability and being as responsive as possible, then I'm consistently engaged in a process of reflexivity and recognizing that it's not just about whether or not you feel something, but really what do our actions do that demonstrate trustworthiness? right? And so if I'm thinking about dimensions of culture and I'm thinking at the individual level, right? But then at a cultural and then a global level, then if we're looking at people, if we're looking at structures that are put in place, we have to be able to acknowledge that there are wounds that have been created, that there are violations that people have experienced, and that families are coming into the therapy room with those wounds in place. And so in supervision, I have an opportunity to talk with supervisees about no matter where you sit, whether a family sits in a privileged position or in the marginalized position, that there are opportunities for healing. Everyone is wounded, but everyone isn't wounded in the same way. And so I can invite the therapist to be really curious about, again, how are dynamics of social justice informing the family's life? And where might there be spots that they can't see, that they don't recognize, that if they lean into, they can make dramatic shifts. Because one of the things that we know about injustice is that so often the family is one of the first places where we have that experience. And I don't think we talk about it as much as we could. So, even if we only think about age, for example, as children, very early on, we understand that things aren't fair. And it's one of the first things that you say, this isn't fair, even if it's just my bedtime. And so it begins a process of looking at those kinds of dynamics, things like fairness. Sometimes, breaking something in half isn't the thing that's fair, right, and equitable, because splitting a sandwich in half isn't fair if one person isn't hungry. And so really, again, really helping and supporting supervisees in challenging these ideas and broadening them in a way that works towards justice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do you have a personal involvement in dealing with this topic?
Oh, definitely. It's my theory of therapy. It's my theory of supervision. So I feel personally connected and as well as professionally connected. It's interesting to share that, because most of the time with my students, for example, when they ask me what my theory of therapy is when I'm teaching theory, I usually don't tell them. I like wait until the end of class and then you tell me which one you think it might be, because I don't like to influence them to lean towards it in order to please me, even though I think it's a beautiful theory. So now it's out there in the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.